So, hope everyone is having a wonderful weekend. Just want to take a look at Bitcoin. Of course, the last couple of weeks have been absolutely unprecedented. You could relate it to the likes of COVID crash, where we seen just capitulation and $1 trillion intraday swings, just absolutely insanity. Okay, and this is what we've seen all throughout the week. And we have now Well, this week has been an immense U-turn from Trump that there's going to be a 90-day tariff pause, and Fed now clearly stating that they are ready to step in and stabilize markets if needed. Okay. In other words, ending quantitative tightening. Okay. And ultimately, that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for quantitative tightening to end, a direction towards quantitative easing. All right. And I do believe that the worst is potentially now behind us, right? That's purely from a fundamental perspective. Now, taking a look at the charts from a technical perspective, throughout the last week, 2 weeks, seeing capitulation in the stock market and Nasdaq, S&P 500, and everything else has been unprecedented. But what else has been unprecedented is the impact to crypto. Okay, meaning we really haven't seen much of a sell-off. We really haven't seen much capitulation in crypto or in Bitcoin, which has taken me by surprise. I would have thought, especially with the capitulation that we have actually seen, we would have seen some of that impact actually transfer into crypto, and we haven't seen that, right? Bitcoin and altcoins have held up um, pretty well, right? So now, taking a look at Bitcoin, we have mentioned this in the last few YouTube videos and streams in the collective. We're still in this breakaway gap. We're now outside of the breakaway gap, but we did trade back into the breakaway gap again. And remember, breakaway gaps are bullish fair value gaps. Okay, buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiencies, right? Where you see a breakout out of consolidation, right? Which is, this is our period of consolidation, this is our breakout, displacement higher, okay? And usually you see us come to trade back into a breakaway gap, right? Mind the arrows, bit messy. So that's what we've now done. We've now come to backfill the breakaway gap, and we have actually, this is a fill. Okay, so this, in this case, we have fulfilled this breakaway gap, right? We did previously get the bounce, which was here, right, from the 50% level of the breakaway gap. We had a nice bounce, but unfortunately, this potentially early sign of reversal, okay, where we had the sell stop sweep here, and then our buy program, right, and then we traded a little bit higher, okay, up here, but unfortunately, what we ended up having was a buy stop sweep here. Okay, you can see this wick high. You can see that we had the raid on the buy stops, which in this case, looking back towards end of March, would have been previous week high sweep or previous week high raid, and then that was our sell program, right? So that was the reason why we ended up having another dive lower, okay? And in fact, what's interesting is that we have one, two, three drives. Okay, so they're three drives lower, right? Each time taking out sell stops. Okay, so sell stops, right? Sell stops or sell side liquidity. Okay, and now we've had a really strong reaction from the breakaway gap. Okay, so I do have Bitcoin in a buy program at this moment because we've taken sell stops, sell side liquidity. Okay, which is here. We've taken previous week low, which is here, okay? And we have had a strong reaction. We're now trading above the equilibrium of the previous week range. So I want to see a weekly close above 83,000, right? If we get a weekly close above this equilibrium, and in fact, if we go down to the daily time frame, if we get a weekly close above equilibrium, then the momentum trade would be previous week high, okay? And you can see this from previous week high to previous week low. You can see we had manipulation, all right, by program, okay? Strong reaction, right? And you can see from the 12-hour that we can see where the order flow from a price action perspective stepped in. So you can see we had a inverse fair value gap, which is, well, actually this is a balanced price range, which is just here. Okay, so balanced price range is when you have an overlapping gap in the displacement. You can see we had the reaction from the BPR, okay, which was a strong reaction. And now you can see that we are trading above the equilibrium. Okay, so this is what we want to hold to then target the previous week high, right? Okay, which is of course over here. So that's ultimately what I'm looking for at the moment. Okay, a lot of this direction in Bitcoin will be in the order flow from price action perspective. Okay, so you can just drop into the time frames and you can pull a lot of, let's say this move ends here, right? Which it probably won't. Okay, so in fact, let's get rid of that for now. Okay, because we have actually got a balanced price range here, which we've not actually traded within yet, right? So we've got a bearish balanced price range, which is just here, which puts us around 85,000. So potential that we reach that by tomorrow. Okay, so if we do reach this, then ideally we're looking for a trade potentially to find our positioning lower, which could be, okay, it could be that we in fact have a reaction from the BPR, bearish BPR, okay, right, which then takes us back to the equilibrium, okay. But if we do trade lower, then this is a point of interest, this OTE, before then trading higher, right? So as you can see, we have a 4-hour buy side imbalance here, sell side inefficiency, right? And you can actually see we do have a gap here, so we can make this another balanced price range, right? And when we say balanced price range, they are typically the strongest PD arrays, premium discount arrays, that are fair value gaps. Okay, so you have inverse fair value gaps, you have normal fair value gaps, and you have BPRs, and BPRs are the strongest. Okay, so I'd like to see a reaction here. If we don't get a reaction here, we might actually just trend higher to the previous week high, which would be even better. Okay, but ultimately, this is what I'm looking for at the moment from a perspective of Bitcoin is we either get the reaction from this BPR. Okay, I don't think there's anything. Yeah, we either get the reaction from the BPR, for our BPR, which is there, okay, and we then trade back into this 4-hour BPR down here, right, which is also confluent with the OTE model, and then we trend higher. If we do get the close above equilibrium, which you can see, as I've said, a lot of the action is in fact at the equilibrium, okay, then if we do get the close above, we might just go and target previous week high. Right, so, okay, right, using my indicator, right, okay, my indicator being the SMA, okay, which is the um, simple moving average, right, and this is the regime filter, okay, so the regime filter, moving average regime filter is the 200-day SMA, right, and then we also have the 20-day SMA in this case, and you can actually see if we get the close above, yes, we did here, but we are actually looking to trade the trend potentially higher in this case, right? But ultimately, this is what we want to reclaim is the moving average filter being the 200-day SMA, and you can just move down into the time frames, and that we have actually started to reclaim the 4 hour, okay, 200 SMA, which is a good sign. Closes above means from a trend following perspective, we can follow the trend. This just helps with direction. Okay, so directional trading, trend following. But yeah, at the moment things are looking pretty positive. This is looking more like a bottoming structure in Bitcoin than how it was looking. Okay, we just needed that fair drive lower into the breakaway gap to completely fulfill it. Right, so these are all early signs of an early sign of reversal, and things are looking a lot more positive at this moment of time. If we look back at 2021, and you can just see how, right, you can, similar situation with this structure over here. This is, this bottoming structure in the summer, right, which we may just be front running ever so slightly. And when we take a look at the candle structure, right, ultimately what you want to see is, okay, so if you take this candle range from this down close candle, right, you can see that we had a raid of the candle range low, and we actually had a close above the candle range high, right? That was an extremely strong case that price was going to reverse and trade higher, right? So it's a very similar situation that we're actually seeing at the moment is we have our previous week range. Okay, let's just get rid of a lot of these drawings. You can see we've got our previous week range. This was obviously a larger down close candle. But if we get the close above equilibrium, it's a strong case to trade to the previous week high and then higher, right? This is where our potential, this structure ultimately is where our early sign of reversal is. And if we enter a phase of quantitative easing or the end of quantitative tightening, then the upside will be tremendous. Okay, so this is nothing compared to what we could expect if quantitative tightening ends, Fed steps in, and other central banks step in, begin to enter a phase of the next phase of this cutting cycle, which is ending quantitative tightening and looking further towards quantitative easing, right? So, before I blabber on anymore, if we take a look at some altcoins, okay, now take a look at Render, because why not? Again, this is all that this move is this week. This is the move this week, right? You can see we had taken sell stops just there, right? Render is still down 70%. Okay, so again, take the previous week range, follow the same concept for all your charts and all your altcoins. Previous week range, got a similar situation here. Candle range high, candle range low. Okay, we have similar situation here. Okay, candle range high, candle range low, and ultimately that's what led to a large reversal higher. Okay, and then you begin to target opposing side liquidity or opposing side inefficiencies. Right, so this is where we're potentially seeing a similar type of structure over here, where we might actually begin to reverse now. Okay, whether that's a full reversal or just a retracement to key inefficiencies, like this weekly inefficiency here, we'll have to see and anticipate that type of move. All right, let's have a look at some other altcoins, Injective being another one. A lot of people are feeling like they've potentially missed out on the bottom, when in reality, a lot of these altcoins, yes, they may not be as hot anymore as they were, but again, 85% down. This is the move. Okay, alts still haven't been putting in very strong moves, right? So this is the move for Injective. Again, you just draw out the previous week candle range, okay, and then you look for a potential reversal, and you can actually see we have a similar situation here. Candle range high, candle range low, right? See, we got the sweep on the candle range low. We began to reverse. Got the sweep on the candle range, well, previous week low. Okay. Which you can see here. Previous week high, previous week low. Right? So, yes, we may not get the close tomorrow above previous week high. If we did, it's a very good indication of being risk on. But even a close above equilibrium, the 50% level, is a strong enough case to be long, okay, and begin to increase some exposure in the market, right? Let's take a look at let's see if there's anything else. We could potentially take a look at Ondo, for example, right? Okay, Ondo, similar situation. It's down 57%, and you can see early sign of reversal, candle range high, candle range low, got the close above, huge reversal, right? So if we get the close above again here, previous week high, previous week low, okay, it makes for a strong case that this tiny move is just the start of a potentially larger move. And again, you just target opposing side liquidity, okay? Which in this case, if we enter an environment of looser monetary policies, you could potentially be targeting above $2 in this case, okay? So there's tremendous risk to reward at these levels still, of course, and even diving a little bit deeper into Ondo, for example, we are still trading within, or at least we had retested this monthly, weekly, even weekly order block right here. okay, and you can see we had the reaction from the weekly order block, okay, so, and in fact, you can actually see from the consequent encroachment level, the 50% level, right, which is a strong case for a good move, a good reaction from it, which we've got here. Right, so ultimately, we want to close above 88 cents, right, for an indication of a reversal. And then at that point, you just trade the trend, okay? And it's a similar type of situation again with a trend following perspective. You want to see in this case, the 50 moving average being reclaimed, which we've got here. Okay, again, this is the 200 SMA as our regime filter. You can see from the 4 hour, we have actually reclaimed the 200 SMA and got some good 4 hourly closes above it, right? And we haven't actually, when we had crossed under was February 15th. The last time we had actually crossed over was January, and that was a short squeeze higher. Okay, so, but when we had the big move squeeze from the cross was actually November last year. Okay, so there's potential we are actually going to get a cross over here and hopefully a larger squeeze higher, right? But again, it's all about identifying where our key levels are, previous week high, and where we close this week, right? Okay, so I'm going to end it there. Again, just everything I've gone through apply to your charts. Okay, looking at from key levels, previous day high, previous day low, previous week high, previous week low. Same from the monthly time frame. You're looking for liquidity rates, okay, and a strong close in the candle structure that you're actually looking at. So in this case, the weekly candle, right? Okay, let's end it there. Cheers. Have a good weekend.